So we're at the tail end of looking at the package, you might say, of the 12 books of the minor prophets. Last week we talked about Zephaniah, but we're actually going to talk about Zephaniah again a little bit more. I had just started talking about it and got right up to the edge of chapter 3, verse 8 and 9. Now, chapter 3, verse 9, you might say in some circles of thought is a very significant verse. It says, at that time, in that day, at that occasion, Yahuwah speaking, he says, I'm going to restore a shafat baror, a pure lip language tongue, so that they can all worship me with a united resolve or a singular shoulder. At what time is that? Well, it talks about Zephaniah 3:8. That tells you what time, but Zephaniah 3:8 comes on the heels of 3:7, so you have to understand what's building. So if you go back to the beginning of the book of Zephaniah, which is what we're going to do, even though I talked about Zephaniah last week, I'm going to try to give this other way of sweeping up right to why would all of a sudden Yahweh say, I'm going to restore a pure tongue. The word bet resh resh, there's different words for pure, but bet resh resh is one of them. This is bet resh vav resh. Bet resh is the word for son, S-O-N, as is bet noon, another word for son, but bet bar, like bar mitzvah. Mitzvah is the instructions. So bar mitzvah is kind of like son of the instructions, or one who has refined a young man, typically like 13 years old, come to the mind of understanding, refined his intellect to the terms of what it means to be a people of Yah, son of the covenant, refined, milled to specification. So bar is not just the word son, but to deburr, to become milled right to the exact specifications. You might say tolerance is another aspect of shaping something to fit just right. So the word baror, or bet resh vav resh, shafa baror, is not just a pure tongue, it's an exact engineered, refined to specification language, unlike any other language. And if you go back to the Tower of Babel, Yahuwah, after the flood, had told people, hey, spread out, go across the earth. But they didn't. They congregated right there, built this big tower, Tower of Babel, kind of like this lighthouse or a skyscraper, this beacon of, hey, stay inside of this tower so we don't get lost and separated, which was the opposite of what he said to do. So he scrambled their languages, and all the people dispersed according to their language groups. So you might have said, hey, this is my friend, I want to hang out with him, but he's speaking a different language. It's like, too bad you're... So what made Elohim determine who to give what language to? You just did. There's no record of that. But this, then, what he's talking about in Zephaniah 3:9 seems to be a reversal of the Tower of Babel situation, where he rolled out, as it were, a morphing, a permutating, over the centuries, a constant evolving. So we've mentioned quite a few times the book by Isaac Moseson, The Origin of Speeches, which was an intentional play on Darwin's book, Origin of Species, Evolution. So Isaac Moseson, brilliant mind. He hates the paleo, though. Just talked to him on a few occasions. Hates the paleo. But the point is, the same way that this rolling change of languages has become, and the word Babel isn't a bad word. It just means confused, mixed, intermingled, as compared to the pure. But is Elohim going to instantaneously make, whoop, everybody speaks pure Hebrew? Is the process of restoring or changing, reversing the Tower of Babel event to the Hebrew, is that an intellectual process where he works with us through our minds, like right now, thinking, logically analyzing, determining what I would say reverse engineering the spelling of Hebrew words to really fathom the depth of what's going on in the spelling of the words? Or is he just going to, boom, hey, we all speak Hebrew, isn't that grand? No way to know. I remember back 2002 or so, going to a Torah study congregation, and there was some talk about this. I don't know that I had necessarily ever bumped into the verse Zephaniah 3:9 to even think that, is that going to happen really on earth? Or is that like in the millennial kingdom, everybody's going to speak Hebrew? And why should I, the thought conversation was going on back then, why should I put any effort to doing that now? When the time comes, you know, the divine insight, the divine touch, your brain opens up and you speak Hebrew fluently. Gosh, it's so much effort to try to sit and think and get your brain to move. It's exhausting. Just let him do it for you later. Or is he? Will he? Nobody knows, but I determined way back then that there seemed to be the hint, and often the vague, cloudy distance, the hint of some value or benefit towards thinking about this stuff now. I remember one of the first words I heard the guy who was teaching say was that the word Torah, I didn't know any Hebrew, but the word Torah meant the covenant of light revealed. How does Torah mean the covenant of light revealed? Well, the T is a tav, and that's the sign of the covenant. The word or is the word light, and the the suffix phonetic the letter hey actually is to express, or a revelation. So the Torah is the covenant of light revealed. Well, something about that struck a chord within me, much more so than simply saying Torah means law. Law. Of course, we know the law was nailed to the cross and done away with, so there was no point in regarding the law of Moses. But the covenant of light revealed, well, that's a whole different sort of matter. Well, so to go back to this overview of Zephaniah, we mentioned last week this phrase, Raza'et, Resh Zion Hey Aleph Tav. Resh Zion is secret. Resh Zion Hey is this thin, just a wisp or a hint. And then the word, what you'd call this standalone Aleph Tav. So sometimes the word spelled Aleph Tav is all by itself, like the fourth of 7 words in Genesis 1:1. Bereshit bara Elohim, that's the first 3 words, and then et, just all by itself, Aleph Tav. Then Hashemayim va'et ha'aretz. Well, there the va'et has a vav in front of, so and Aleph Tav, and the Aleph Tav is hyphenated to the word aretz. So this idea of the standalone Aleph Tav, when I do this, I'm saying there's a box around it, say, numerous times Aleph Tav will show up in the scripture, but not so many times Aleph Tav is all by itself. This is one of the times, Raza Et, where Aleph Tav stands all by itself. Enough to draw your attention and say, what's it referring to? It's not hyphenated as if it was a grammatical device pointing to the noun which is acted upon by the verb in the sentence, like Va'et ha'aretz would be, but this Aleph Tav by itself, it's different. And to say that, nobody, as far as I know, nobody knows who put the hyphens in the sentence structure. The syntax of the Hebrew, the way we have it today, was not necessarily the way it was way back at the beginning. So were they all standalone Aleph Tavs? Were some of them hyphenated? There's no way to know. But anyway, the word Zephan means north, but it also means hidden treasure. Hidden, what do you hide? Treasure. But it also means secret, and it can also mean conspiracy plot. So if there was ever going to be talk about conspiracy theories, Zephaniah is the book that has to do with that. So we talked about, Kurt has this picture up, some painting that somebody did showing utter devastation, skulls and fire and wreckage. It's the book of Zephaniah. So chapter 1, verse 2, Yahweh goes on record as saying, I am going to utterly destroy everything on the face of the earth, man, animal, bird, fish, and the stumbling blocks of the wicked. What stumbling blocks of the wicked? He then goes on to elaborate a little bit closer detail, and he says, any remnant of the Baal, or ritual, or custom, or deep state. The word kamar, kaf mem resh, means fruit hidden underground. That's the deep state concept. The cabal, the conspiracies, he's going to take all that stuff that he hates, which is an offense to him, and just get rid of it. So we mentioned there was that movie that Mel Gibson made, Apocalypto, showing the Mayans in Central America and how bad the things they were doing. We think, oh yeah, gosh, those Central Americans. But Yahweh said the Canaanites were doing that stuff and that he wiped them out by sending in Israel. And then Israel was doing worse than the Canaanites. So we could look at the Mayans or the Aztecs and say, gosh, those were just vicious bloodhounds. But Israel did worse than them. And Yahweh said, I'm going to remove any remnant. So when you look at ancient Israel and you look at the land and you say, I don't see any evidence of 40,000 headless corpses like they found in what the Mayans had been doing, but Israel was doing worse than that. But Yahweh said, I'm going to get rid of all evidence that you guys ever had anything to do with that, so you wouldn't resurrect your stupid insanity as if it was archaeologically profound. And then he mentions another problem, Zephaniah 1, verse 5. Abraham might have said, children, don't be idiots, don't worship the damn constellations. Now, I'm not using profanity here, damn. The Hebrew word dam, dalet mem, is the word blood, and it's also the word for likeness. Silent, like the word dummy, like crash test dummy in English. Dummy is a likeness of a human, but he's not alive. He's silent. He just sits there. You put him in the car, you smash the car and see what happens to the crash test dummy. So for Abraham to say to his children, look at him, my job, Abraham speaking, is to sever the stars and write them up, but they're likenesses, they're damn images. Don't turn them into gods and worship them, you idiots. What will it take for the children of Israel to wake up and be sensible? The job of the people of Israel is to bear fruit, like it says in Galatians 5:22. Love, joy, peace, goodness, kindness, patience, self-control, those kind of things. If we stay plugged into Aleph Tav, picture the menorah, this shape here. Yeshua said, I'm the vine, you're the branches. He's rooted in Yahuwah. The juice, you might say, the ruach flowing through the veins to produce the fruit. Well, if we're the branches producing fruit, then our job is to just stay plugged in to him. Not worshiping other things, not running off seeking after other ideologies, but finding sufficient in the Aleph Tav, in the Torah. The word sog, Samik Vav Gimel, so Zephaniah 1:6, literally means stay within the classification. Bakash and Drash. Bakash, Bet Kufshin, is a proactive, intensive quest, and the word Drash is study, analyze, think, and confer with one another. That's what he told us to do. Sog, Samik Vav Gimel, stay within the classification. Don't worship the tree. Don't fret the dog watering the tree. Just bear his fruit. There's a verse, I think it's chapter 1, verse 7, that says, hey, Samik. We talked about this last week. It's translated, hush, be quiet before him. But hey means the as a prefix, and Samik, again, this menorah shape, the tree, the branch, but it's also, as we've said before, there was cups, there's branches, and it looks like there was 3 cups on each of the 6 branches, 4 in the middle, so that makes 22. So 22, and it's divided by 7, happens to equal pi, 3.14, just a mathematical item of interest. Does the word hey Samik mean hush? Or does it mean the Samik, the engineered structure? The menorah in the presence of Yahweh, his full attention is to orchestrate it as it's established. Orchestrate what? Orchestrate everything. So to know the meaning of the letters is not just to know that the letter Samik is shaped like a tree, or the menorah, or the mast of a ship, or a skeleton, a backbone with ribs sort of picture, a trellis. But it's this concept, the way I see it, the 22 divided by 7 is the 22 letters divided by the Mishkan pattern, the 7 elements, but also the word 7 is to swear a vow. So to say there's 22 letters that can be divided up into these 7 packages, but they all have to do with the sworn vow. That's the Samik. But it's simply translated hush, silent, like as if it was the word Dalet Mem. It goes on to say that Yahweh has prepared a slaughter and invited his guests. And then he's saying who's going to get slaughtered. Officials, king's sons, you might say those are the privileged elite. They like to call themselves the blue blood. You know, we who bleed are the red blood. Those privileged the royals, literally the upper class, are called blue bloods, a whole different sort of human. They don't consider themselves to be like the peasants. Those wearing foreign garments, which is the word labosh nakar, nun kaf resh in this case is the word foreign, which means not of Yahuwah and his people and his custom, his culture. Those who jump over the threshold. Kurt was saying, well, that's you might say the custom of a man picking up his bride and carrying her over the threshold. I had heard that it was something else, but whatever it is, it's some custom of fortune and luck, some ritual that has nothing to do with Yahweh and his kingdom and his people. And then those who labor for masters to fill their houses with stuff using the techniques of injustice and deceit. I'm not doing it for me. I'm doing it because I'm being hired to do it. And then it says, people of Canaan destroyed, those laden with silver. Well, the interesting thing is, you have to know what the word Canaan means. It's not just the name of the place over there. It's Kaf Nun Ayin Nun, Phoenician traders. The word means folded wings, humbled, or merchandise. So they're the shipping traders. The word silver, Kaf Samik Pei, means desire, longing, yearning, to fade or become pale or put to shame. So, and again, I'm telling you these things because the words in Hebrew that we're reading, which are translated Canaan, silver, well, you read it as if those are nouns talking about places, and that carries the story narrative. But when you realize by using Klein's dictionary and analyzing the letters that everything means more, it's attitude, it's verb, it's not just the noun. People are making a lot of money. And all they care about is, got to have more, got to have more, got to keep the commerce going, got to keep the economy going, even if we're driving it with injustice and deceit. He then says, men who are content, settled, thinking Yahweh will do nothing. Yahweh's not going to intervene, doing good or bad. I'm just a successful businessman. And I've heard people tell me stories in the construction business where people will, with injustice and deceit, rob one another and say, hey, it's just business. That's business. It's the American way. That's the American way of doing business. And you think you're going to get away with that? Chapter 1, verse 13, this is what Yahuwah is going to bring upon the people. And remember, this is the promised land because of what they did to his land. He's going to bring plunder, desolation, turn them into refugees, such reversals that the mighty warriors will cry bitterly. Fury, trouble, distress, destruction, desolation, darkness, blackness, cloud, thick cloud, trumpets of battle cry. Those are just the Hebrew. Each one of those words in Hebrew, you could look it up and get more out of it, but this would be a pretty bad time. So some people hang on to the perspective that God is love. God is love. Peace on earth, goodwill toward men. Is that the same guy that is speaking here in Zephaniah? I mean, for people who say Yahuwah of the Old Testament is the exact same guy as Jesus Christ of the New Testament, is the one speaking here in chapter 1 of Zephaniah plunder, desolation, reversals, fury, trouble, distress, destruction, desolation, darkness, blackness, cloud, thick cloud, trumpets of battle cries, bringing down fortifications and high towers. Is that the same as baby Jesus? Chapter 1, verse 17. People will go around like blind people, stunned and confused, dazed, and blood thrown around like dust, flesh scattered like dung on the streets. Nobody burying anybody with funerals because they have sinned against Yahuwah, the fury of Yahuwah, an abrupt end of all the inhabitants of the land. Chapter 2, verse 1, then, the great difficulty, which is that word kufav shin, which is the word for straw, stubble, chaff, something burnable, is not about money, nun, kaf, samik, pay, having silver, having desires met. Again, I believe that it's not translated accurately enough to know what the heck is even going on in Stone's Tanakh. But anyway, chapter 2, verse 3, this is the upshot of the whole thing. Regardless of what's coming, regardless of what's threatened to happen, seek Yahweh, which is the word bakash. Seek zadakah, which is righteousness, and seek ayin nun vav hey. We talked about that last week, which is make it your obsession to respond with attention to what he said. And then the word perhaps you'll find refuge on the day when this stuff happens. That word perhaps is spelled Aleph Vav Lamed Yod, but that word also means out in front, foolish, healthy, sound. It's like a pioneer or a front man or a master of ceremonies, somebody up in front of the camera and up on the stage. You will be protected, and the word protected is Samik Tav Resh. The word used there is spelled Tav Samik Tav Resh Vav. Satar means protected, hidden, shelter, concealed, and secreted. The other meaning of the word satar, which you'll find in Klein's dictionary, so I have this sign like the mathematical divide sign, a dot, a line, a dot. It's kind of like there's these two things on the other side of the line. It's like waters above, waters below, the firmament kind of picture. The same exact word satar means pull down, destroy, refute, contradict, disarranged, upset, neutralized, made secret. And Daniel was told to hide the words and seal the book. The word hide is Samik Tav Mem, which in the dictionary is the entry right next to Samik Tav Resh. So what I'm saying is, what Elohim did to his words, pulled them down, refuted, contradict, disarranged, upset, neutralized, made secret. This act of studying the language and finding the meaning of his words is this inverse, the other side of the line of exactly what he told Daniel to do. So if Daniel, again, going back to Daniel 12:4, was told by the archangel Gabriel, hide the word, seal the book until the time of the end, if that word end, spelled Kuf Zadi, is the end of the 2,730-year curse, then this very type of study, bakashing, droshing, the spelling of the words, is to become secreted, concealed by Elohim for the sake of doing so. That's what he said. The interesting other take on that word to be hidden and concealed, did a video a few years back called The Butcher Boy. And I was looking at the 5-letter alphabet of the Sophite letters, Kaf, Mem, Nun, Kaman. Not only is it looking at the spelling of words and using it to realize that there's something buried within the English and whether those words are retained from Spanish, it goes back to Hebrew. And the exact same thing going on there to say, what does the 5 letters of the Sophite alphabet mean? That's a perfect reference. Like a spider in a web, laying in ambush, ready to come out and grab. And then the word pezadi means open mouth, but it's also the word pizza, which is explode and detonate, which is exactly what happened when the pirates would blast you with the cannons if you're a Spanish galleon. The interesting thing is the next group of words used in Zephaniah are Gaza, Ashkelon, Ashdod, and Ekron. Well, those are 4 principal cities in the little strip of land today known as the Gaza Strip that's inhabited by what we would call Palestinians. But those words mean something. The word Gaza spelled Ayin, Zion, Hey. Well, as we've talked before, the word Oz, we would think of it spelled O-Z, like the Wizard of Oz. The letter Ayin actually has this guttural GH, so it's Ghaz. Like, that's where they come up with Gaza, because it's Ayin, Zion, Hey, and it means a she-goat because it's got the Hey suffix. So Ayin, Zion is the word goat, but it's also strength, might, fortress, refuge, splendor, and glory. So it's basically this citadel of the Philistines, their powerful castle, just like the pirates down in the Cayman Caribbean. The word Ashkelon, Aleph, Shin, Kuf, Lamed, Vav, Nun. Well, Vav, Nun is the suffix, Aleph the prefix. So Shin, Kuf, Lamed means equal measure, balanced scales. Well, that's like a synonym with the word mishpat. Consider, examine, to take, like a tax, but it's also meter, balance, and rhyme, which is all poetry. So it has to do with poise and negotiating. So I'm trying to show you that this word Ashkelon is not just the name of a Palestinian city on the Gaza Strip. It means something has to be so poised. Like if you're a negotiator, negotiating a business deal or political as a diplomatic envoy, you've got to be poised. You've got to know, well, kind of like the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, poised and serious and being able to deal with matters of life and death and trillions of dollars. You send your best people out there to represent your country, that kind of a thing. Ashdod, Aleph, Shin, Dalet, Vav, Dalet. Well, Shaddad, take the second letter and duplicate it, make the third, drop in Yods and Vavs as wild cards. It's the same as the omnipotent almighty. But the word Ashdod here, waterfall, cascade, rushing, plunge, ravage, violent, overpowering, devastation, plunder, and destroy. Again, these are all terms like the pirates would have. Ekron, Ayin Kuf Resh, Vav Nun, the Vav Nun suffix, Ayin Kuf Resh, to sterilize, castrate, barren, remove, abolish, uproot, unfruitful, like the concept of the word eugenics, like the United States does with other cultures that they don't like, other people groups. It also means basis, foundation, principle, and fundamental law, and it's the root of the word for scorpion, Ayin Kuf Resh, with a bet. Akrab would be the word scorpion. So what I'm saying is that the Philistine cities, back in those days, the names of these four cities were statements of what they were going to do to their enemies. And Yahuwah says, you think you're so big and smart and so powerful, I'm going to turn it back around on you, and everything you're talking about doing to everybody else is what's going to happen to you. I'm going to do it to you. That's right. Gentle Jesus, God of love and peace, is going to do to the people groups their pride and arrogance of what they've been doing to others when the time comes, when the day arrives for Yahweh to step in and fulfill his promises to us, his people. He's going to turn the ways of our greatest adversaries upon themselves. That's the point. Chapter 2, verse 7. Exist Het Bet Lamed. Now, the word Het Bet Lamed means roped off, destroyer, saboteur, ropes or rigging, to pledge or to be bound by a pledge, like to swear a vow and then be bound by the vow, to writhe and travail, to be wounded and then have indemnity paid for the wounding, fetus, which is, say, be pregnant and go into labor pains to bring it about in a measure or a line. And then it says, unto sharit, Shin Aleph Resh is the word for remnant or survivor. So what he's saying here, there exists a certain measured time, a certain measurement of a roped off area. In other words, if you have no idea who is Yahuwah, what's his covenant relationship with Israel, what's that got to do with us, who are these remnant survivors of the house of Yehudah, as it says, Bet Yehudah. He says, Ayin Lamed Yod Hey Mem. Hey Mem is the prefix meaning they. Ayin Lamed Yod, the word for Aliyah, means to raise them up, promote, or success them. Yahweh says here chapter 2, verse 7 of Zephaniah, everything on the face of the earth has happened for a reason. The time when the overlords got to ruin his people is because his people broke the vow of being in covenant with him. But it wasn't a forever situation. It would be for until a certain scope of time had been measured, which for the house of Yehuda was 40 years, or in which case of the Shemitah year consideration, it was 70 years. And when Daniel figured that out, that's when Gabriel showed up and said, hey, it's time to be released. But they didn't address the northern kingdom, which is the 2,730-year curse. So I can apply to the house of Israel the same terms as the house of Yehuda. But if you don't know anything about that, it's not even in your mind for having anything to do with eschatology, the study of end times. This word, the next word here in the sentence, Yod Resh Ayin Vav Nun. Again, the Vav Nun is the one who, Yod Resh Ayin. We talked about that word Resh Ayin before. It means evil, harm, wicked, and calamity, but it's also to think, purpose, aim, shout, the root of the word Taruah, which is trumpet blast, and it's friend and companion. The rest of those words in this sentence are Bet Bet Tav Yod, one deserving. I will, Shin Kuf Lamed, that's like the word Ashkelon. Ashkelon, I will equal balance paid in full. See, here he's using the word Ashkelon as if it was the name of the city, but he's invoking the fact that it's balanced scales of justice, like the word Mishvat. Bet, Ayin Resh Bet, evening, mixture, sociable, pleasant. And then Yod, Resh Bet Zadi Vav Nun, E Rabatzon, to lie down, makes me lie down. Well, that's like Psalm 23. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He makes me lie down in pleasantness. Why? The word Kaf Yod, because Yod, Pei Kuf Dalet, Mem, the Mem suffix has to do with the plural, like they or you all. Pei Kuf Dalet, FQD, Fakad, visiting the iniquity, as he said in the Ten Commandments, of those who bring his name to nothing, who hate him. Visit, punish, hold accountable. It's the exact same verb action as the parable of the talents. Remember, Yeshua gave the story. Guy gave 1 talent to a man, 3 talents to another, 5 to another, went away, came back. Tell me what you've done. Held them accountable. They passed in review, and he rewarded or punished them according to what they had done, investing the talents. That passing in review and giving a man what he's due is the word Pei Kuf Dalet. So this word, Ki Ifakadam, Yahweh Elohim, Yahweh their Elohim, Veshuv Shavatam, when he returns their captivity. Well, this isn't a matter of if, maybe, probably not, because he's sick and disgusted with Israel and they're all going to burn in hell anyway. That's bad thinking. That's bad doctrine. That's wrong. He says he's going to return their captivity. He's going to turn it around. And when he does, he's going to visit and hold accountable and give equal balance to who's been doing what. Has that happened yet? Doesn't seem like it. So this can't be the end of the world. This has to happen before this world is over. Chapter 2, verse 8, Zephaniah. I have heard the taunts and jeers. 2, verse 9. Therefore, as I live, that's Chai Ani, he can't swear by anything greater than his own existence. And then, we talked about when he says Nam Yahweh, or Nam Yahweh Zavot. Well, this time, boy, it's like your mother calling you by all 3 of your names. First name, your middle name, and your last name. It's like, oh, big trouble now. He says, Nam Yahweh Zavot El He Israel. Woo! then he talks, here's an interesting thing, if you know the Bible story, he talks about the sons of Moab and the sons of Ammon and what's going to happen to them because they were taunting and jeering what happened to Israel when Yahweh was reprimanding his people. He said he's going to make them like Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, do you remember who the great forefather of Moab and Ammon was? It was Lot. Remember, Lot escaped what befell, the fire and brimstone that came down on Sodom and Gomorrah. And then Lot had two daughters who were afraid, thinking everybody on the face of the earth is dead, just like Noah's flood, and they alone are yet alive to repropagate the earth. And so they got their father drunk and conceived, each one of them, a child by their drunk father. One was named Moab and the other one was named Ammon. So here, a couple centuries later, after those two people groups, the Moabites and the Ammonites, became arch enemies of Israel, Yahweh is saying, I'm gonna do the same thing to you I did to Sodom and Gomorrah. God is love. He said this area, the Moabites and Ammonites' homeland, will become like a rustling thorn bush. Picture tumbleweeds blowing across the southwest United States. Salt mine, like the Dead Sea. A desolate wasteland forever, which it still is today. It used to be like the Garden of Eden. That's why Lot went there. It was so lush. Totally nothing can grow at all. Absolutely dead. Chapter 2, verse 10. This they will have in place of their haughtiness. Again, like a picture of the line above, or the dot above the line and the dot below, the division symbol. Because of their haughtiness, this is what they're getting. It's all balanced scales of justice. And so whenever we see that everything Yahweh does is the inverse, the reversal, the overturn, the balancing of scales, he always keeps telling us, this is what you guys, my people, should be doing in order to get the good side of things. Quit doing all this stupid stuff. Seek me and live. Study my words. Pursue righteousness. That's it. That's the formula for success that he's given us. That is the arsenal of all our weaponry. That is the key to the high tower of refuge. Chapter 2, verse 11, Yahweh will be fearsome unto them. That's the word Norah. Norah. You know, like the lady Nora Jones, beautiful voice. This is the opposite of that. Same word Nora, but fearsome and terrifying. He will enfeeble all the powers of the earth. Hasn't happened yet. NATO, World Economic Forum, Bilderbergs, Illuminati, are any of them enfeebled? United Nations, chapter 2, verse 12. And you also, Cushites, you're slain by my sword. Well, it says Cush is simply the land of the Ethiopians. But the word Cush, Cushvav Sheen, means spindle. A spindle is a spool that you wrap up threads on, getting bigger and thicker. You who just live your life trying to gain more and more and more. Remember, I think they asked, what was it, Getty or somebody that they asked many years ago, how much is enough? Just a little bit more. That attitude. He said he's also going to destroy Assyria and Nineveh, make Nineveh a wasteland arid as the desert. Well, Nineveh, Nun Yod Nun Vav Hey, Nin literally means to multiply like fish. So he was going to take that which was multiplying like fish and turn it into an arid wasteland. Again, it's opposite if you look at the meaning of the word. Assyria, Aleph Shin Vav Resh. Shin Vav Resh means a few different things. One is bull, so I, the bull. You look at, I don't know how to look it up. Kurt, somebody or look it up. The British just had something like the Olympic Games. It was the British Games, and they had this big, giant mechanical bull, like, was it supposed to be the god Molech or something, come out? Yeah, like that. Klein's page 647. The word Ashur, Shin Vav Resh, means lie in wait, like the pirates, align, the wall, look, regard, consider, dance on the rope, lines of instruction. Hey, I'm just kind of toying with this. You going to toy with what Yahweh said? That area of the North Africa, the Sahara, used to be a swamp. They've found skeletons of 40-foot crocodiles. Now it's just nothing but dead sand. When Yahuwah says he's going to overturn and make something desolate, that's what it looks like. He says, this is the exultant city that dwelt in security, that said in its heart, only I, and beside me, nothing. Well, that's kind of what Yahuwah says. I'm the only Elohim, and beside me there is no other. The attitude of American, let's say, or Roman arrogance is, we got no contenders. There's nobody to challenge a foot race with or a fight. And it's like, we win, we got it all. Yeah. Chapter 3, verse 1. Woe to the city of depression. It looks like he's talking about Jerusalem. We're going to break in a couple minutes. But here's the problem. So the opposite is what we should be doing. They didn't listen to his voice, didn't accept correction, which is the word mosar, memvav samek resh, which means ethics, morals, like a bit and bridle, didn't trust Yahweh, the word bet, tet, chet, didn't draw near, kufresh bet, draw near, kufresh bet. To draw near can mean for battle, but it's also, that's what he gave us the Moedim and Shabbat for, Leviticus 23. Its princes are roaring lions. Its judges are wolves of the evening. They don't leave a bone. Another way to read that is they don't let the knife miss the target for cause, self-essence. They don't bring about that which is written. They cut short, and now the bones, the art of writing. It all has to do, again, not to elaborate right now on this, but it all has to do with they meticulously get into every letter of every word mentioned before, the guy named David Wynn Miller, Parse Syntax Grammar. You may know every little letter, every little grammar mark, but what did Yahweh say? They keep missing that, which is what we're studying. Its prophets are impetuous men of rebellion. The priests have desecrated the sacred. They've robbed the Torah. The corrupt one knows no shame. Yahweh here, we're just at the end, I have eliminated nations. I've desolated their towers, which is taken down everything they thought was beyond touch, destroyed their streets. There's no traffic, cities ruined, no inhabitant. And Yahweh is saying, I said just only fear me. But the word me is Aleph, Vav, Tav, Yod. And again, as we said, the word be Aleph, Vav, Tav is letter of the alphabet, sign, symbol, and oath. Just have a regard for what I said. It's in every single letter. And again, if you think he's saying, just fear me, take hold of correction, it's in these letters, so that her abode would not be terminated, despite all that I had decreed against her, but instead they arose early. I think this is the verse 7. That's the word Shechem, to rise early. So when he says in verse 8 or verse 9 to restore the language so that they would all serve him with one consent, that's heave ho, with one shoulder. To rise early is the shoulder, and they corrupted all their deeds is Shin Chet, Hey Shin Chet Yod Tav Vav, which is the root of the word Messiah, Shin Yod Het, which is conversation and communication. They arose early and corrupted the conversation, the communication. So for him to restore the language is you might say, a coming of the Messiah to restore what he meant by his communication as symbolized by each letter of the Aleph Bet. That's what it's saying. Okay, time for a break.